Hey everybody, this is John from Code Planet, and this is video number 2. And today we're going to be taking a look at Flight.js. So for those of you that haven't heard of it, Flight is an event-driven web framework that was created at Twitter. It's still used at Twitter and with TweetDeck and a number of other projects. It's open source on GitHub, which you can check out here at github.com/flightjs/flight. And today we're just going to be taking a really brief look at it, kind of pulling out one of the examples from their documentation and talking through how to get everything set up. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here into my terminal, and I'm going to go into my folder. I'm just going to make a new folder called, let's say, like Flight Tutorial, something like that. I'm a CD in there. Okay, cool. So I've got this blank file here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bootstrap like a really basic, not even semantically correct HTML file, and then we're just going to use that Flight Tutorial. And we're just going to use this basically to, link in our source code files and things like that and get this thing up and running. Okay, cool. So we've got this real basic thing here. And so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go over back to their GitHub, and I'm just going to go look at their install instructions, because we want to get jQuery, which is its only dependency, and also a copy of Flight.js itself. So right now there's a split. They're working on version 2. But for right now, the supported version is version 1. That's where all the docs are and things like that. So I'm going to click on the 1x, and then I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to look at installation. And so basically, they recommend that you just pull these two scripts in here. So we'll go back up to here, and let's just nudge those over a little bit. Okay, cool. So we've got jQuery sourced in here, and then we've also got our copy of Flight.js. One thing real quick I'm seeing from the docs is that we're going to want to add a protocol on here, just because I'm going to be running this locally from the file protocol. So that looks good, and then I guess the last thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do like a script source equals, and then we'll just call it script.js, something like that for now, and that's where we're going to put our code in a minute. Okay, so we're including jQuery, we're including Flight, we're looking at our script.js, which we haven't made yet, and that should be pretty good. So if we go ahead and open index.html, and then do something like view source on it, we should see all those things working like we want them to. A side note is that if you look at the Flight repo, they actually have all of their components broken out into this really modular way. So you can take a look at like advice, base, component, all these different things. But to get that working would require something like Browserify or Webpack or Require.js, which I'll do in another video. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to be pulling down what they call the standalone version, which is basically all of this minified and compressed together. So you only have to include one file. Okay, so from there we should be pretty good. So I'm going to go back into my project here, and we've got our index.html, but now what we need is our script.js. So I'm going to open up this new thing here. Okay, so there's like basically 3 parts to a Flight component. I'm just going to put them in comments right now. Like there's all this functionality that exists for being a Flight component. And so we need to initialize our code as a Flight component. And that usually happens at the top of the file. And then 2, we need to have our actual, let's say, collection of methods, because we've got all this different functionality that each component can do. And then the third thing is we need to attach our Flight component to the DOM. And so that's basically how working with Flight is going to be. So we're going to create our own code, wrap it in a Flight component, and then attach that to the DOM. And the way that Flight works is you make all these different components for all the different functionality you need, and the only way they communicate with each other is by triggering and then listening for events. So they throw and catch basic DOM events, which is something that all of our browsers are already set up to do. And so we'll be exploring the DOM events more in the next video. For now, I just kind of want to get a really simple hello world going. So keeping that stuff in mind, let's start here. So their demo is basically an email inbox. So I guess we can just use that for now. So you'd set up like this new variable, and it's going to be flight.component of this thing that we're about to create here. It's a little bit confusing to do that at the top, but I think it's kind of nice because you see what's going on. So the next step is going to be to actually create this inbox, and this is the same inbox that you'll see right here. And so we're going to create this thing, and then here it's going to wrap it in a flight component. Okay, so we've got this function inbox. Let's go down here. And then in here is going to be like all the meat of our code and things like that. Meat. All right. And then the last thing, this part 3, when it's all done, is we're going to take capital I inbox, which you can see on line 7 is the returned flight component. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to attach it to something in the DOM, like attach to, and then in their example, they have this div with an ID of inbox, something like that. And so like a little note to self, we're going to want to make that div. So I'm just going to hop over real quick in another tab and open index. And then here I'm just going to do div ID equals inbox, just so we have that for later. And maybe I'll even put hello world in there for now, just so we can see it. Okay, so we've got that. All right, so now we've got our 3-step process. The flight component part is done, the attach to is done, and so now what we really need is here, this like meat of our code, what it's going to do. And before we get into that, this is like, I guess, the 3.5 part of a flight component is what it does when it becomes initialized. And so basically you attach this thing to the DOM with all these methods, but those methods aren't just going to run by themselves. We need to say what events or what things need to occur for those methods to run. So I guess first we can set up the methods. So we can have like this foo equals a function. And then we could also have down here this bar equals a function. So we've got these 2 different functions. And let's have them each, just for now, alert something. So alert foo and alert bar. Okay, so that's like the part that's pretty easy to understand. The initialize that I was speaking about earlier is a little bit more confusing. And so the way that looks is we do like a this after, and after is a flight event that's going to be triggered for us all the time. We do initialize. So after the component is initialized, what do we do? And that takes in a function. And so the way these components work is you can do things like if the component is like this on click, maybe we this dot foo, something like that. And then similarly you could do like this dot on, and we could do mouse over, and then we do this dot bar, something like that. And so this is a full flight component here. So it's a little bit confusing, but I think after seeing it you can start to get the feel for it. So this line down here is only significant to see what part of the DOM the component is attaching to, whether it's the document or a specific div or anchor or something like that. Likewise, this is completely just bootstrap, just scaffolding stuff. It's just saying that we're going to define all of these methods in here, but we need them to become a flight component, so they inherit all of that functionality. This is our own methods, whatever we want to happen here. And then this is really the confusing part, but it's really just saying, as the component initializes, what sort of events are you listening for, and what methods do you want to trigger when those events fire. And then one other thing, I'm just going to go back here, because I don't want mouse over and clicks fighting each other. So I'm just going to change these to console logs, just so we don't have like a ton of alerts happening all the time. Okay, so now let's see how many typos I've got in my code. I'm going to go back here and close this out. I'm going to open index.html again, and we see our hello world. So let's go into view page source. So we've got this div ID of inbox, hello world, and then we've got these 3 scripts, which I hope are loading. And so what we should see if we open the element inspector now is that when we mouse over hello world, bar gets thrown. Do you see that down there? And then we click on hello world, foo gets thrown. And so this is like a really, really basic intro here. In the next video, we're going to have 2 components communicating with each other, but I just kind of wanted you to see that if we go back to the code here, on mouse over, it throws this dot bar, you can see that here, and this dot bar console logs the word bar. On click, it calls this dot foo, and this dot foo console logs the word foo. And so we can see as we mouse over, it throws a bar. As we click, it throws a foo. As we mouse over, it throws a bar. Click, it throws a foo. So that's the real basic introduction. Stay tuned for some more videos. Thanks.